Continuing on with Celebrate Freedom Week, we spent our first couple of days talking about the Declaration of Independence and how important that document was, especially at the time, but even still today, and what an inspiring document that is to people around the world, even to this day. So we wanted to continue on and talk, starting today, talking about the U.S. Constitution. Okay, this you may not know much about this document, but probably moving forward in school, you're going to be learning a lot more about it. Okay, this is our founding document. This is the document that created our country in the form that it is as we know it, as far as our way our government's set up and the way our society is ordered. Okay, this is a document that provided the foundation of of other nations as well. Other nations, when they one by one as they achieve their independence, have then looked to our founding documents and our constitutions, and they have many nations around the world have patterned their constitutions after our own. Okay, so what is it? What is the U.S. Constitution? Okay, it's the supreme law. It's constitutional law supersedes any other law in the United States. It supersedes state law, it supersedes county law, it supersedes city law. Okay, it is the source of the legal authority underlying the existence of the U.S. and the federal government of the United States. Without the Constitution, there is no justification for the existence of our federal government. Okay, there would be officially no United States of America without the Constitution. We would be a collection of individual states, that would be bickering and arguing with each other all over the place. Okay, and it provides the framework for the organization of the U.S. government, the way that our government is set up, the different branches and whatnot, and what rights and what roles that each of them play. It was written after the Revolutionary War. What you may not know is that for the first 3 to 4 years that the United States existed, we lived under a document called the Articles of Confederation. And that was the original structure of the U.S. government. The government originally was extremely weak because we had just got done fighting a brutal 7-year war for our independence from an overwhelming centralized government, in the form of a king and a monarchy. And so there were some people who still preferred that form of government. There were some. But the majority of people did not trust centralized government at all. They lived by the old saying that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so they wanted no one having total authority and control over them. And so in this original form of government, there wasn't a separation of powers within the federal government. There was only one legislature. There was no president. There was no Supreme Court system. Okay, there was only they called it a unicameral, which means only one house of legislature. Okay, the central government was extremely weak. States had the most power, more power than the federal government. I mean, the federal government did not have the power. They did not have the power to tax. They couldn't regulate foreign trade. If individual states wanted to sign individual trade deals with a foreign nation, they had the power and the right to do so, which meant that foreign relations were constantly getting bogged down in misunderstandings and whatnot because of this. And also the federal government was in debt. It cost a lot of money to fight a war, and the federal government did not have the power to tax the population in order to pay that off. And that also meant that they were not able to pay for a standing army to protect against a possible reinvasion by England or Great Britain. And so about 4 years after the Revolutionary War, the government convened, they called it a constitutional convention. And they met, each state sent a certain number of delegates, and they met from May 25th to September 17th in 1787. They met in Philadelphia. That was the original capital of the United States. And their intention was they were only intending to revise and fix the Articles of Confederation. But they ended up replacing the Articles and creating an entirely new government. They threw the Articles out. They quickly realized that, you know what, this is just not going to work. This thing is so bad that we can't fix it. There's only so much duct tape we can put on this, so to speak, before the whole thing just falls apart. And so during this convention, the delegates, they fell into two different sides, two camps. One side was a proponent of a very, very strong central government. They were people that tended to be a little more favorable to the idea of a monarchy. And these were people that tended to be elites, right? They were the educated. They were the wealthy, right? They were the landowners. These often they were landowners. They were people of means. And so they felt like they were the elite and they had the right to be in control. And so they did support the Constitution and a strong central government. The Federalist Papers were written largely by Alexander Hamilton. A few were written by James Madison and John Jay. But they were written, originally they were published anonymously, and they were published in newspapers in the major cities in the United States at the time, making the argument for the ratification of the Constitution. Okay, because it was a controversial thing. There was a lot of debate about it at the time, because they didn't know how it was all going to play out. Now, the other side were the anti-federalists. They supported a far weaker central government. They felt too much power was taken away from the states. And so they originally opposed the Constitution. They wanted certain concessions. Okay, these guys were guys of, these were men, generally tended to be men of lesser means. Men who were not part of the, necessarily part of the political elite. They weren't the social elite. They weren't necessarily wealthy and influential, so to speak, at the time. But they were kind of looking out for the little guy, right? And so they pushed for and succeeded in getting a Bill of Rights included. And the basic principles of the Constitution. You'll forgive me if it's misspelled on the screen. I wasn't paying attention to the spell check when I was typing this up. There are 4 basic principles of the Constitution that you need to know and understand. First one is popular sovereignty, and that means that popular means people, the people. The popular vote is when in elections, like we have one coming up, when you hear about the popular vote, that's just a total of all of the votes of the people, the popular vote. And sovereignty means power. So that means that government power, it resides or lays with the people. The people hold the power. It's not an elite, it's few, it's not a king, it's not somebody that is chosen from on high to rule over us. We decide. We decide who serves in that position. And whoever serves in the position of government, they do not work for themselves. They work for us. They represent us so we can go about our lives doing the other things that we need to do. Okay, the second one, and we're going to end with the second one, we'll pick it back up tomorrow. The second principle is limited government. And that means that government is not all powerful. The government can only do specifically what the people let it. The government cannot just do whatever it wants. There are certain limited powers that we, the people, the public, allow the government to perform on our benefit. Okay, the first 2 principles, we have popular sovereignty and limited government. And I'll get some images posted up in files in your teams under files and class materials, and there'll be some things that you can for you to put in your in your journal to kind of correspond with this. And we'll see you tomorrow.